Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican, and welcome to another Railway Empire video. I think we got a good one this time, a really good one. This is, we're going to go in and play a scenario. The Metropolis is set in 1830 in the East, and it's considered medium difficulty. I actually think I find it to be pretty difficult, but I think we got it figured out now. I think you're going to like this one. I certainly enjoyed playing it. So what we're going to do here, I want to just walk you through the task, and let's just go in as the general first off. I just want to show you the task and talk about what's going on in this scenario and why it's difficult on people. All right, so we're in the East Coast. We got all the mountains. We got pretty good resources. But here's the thing. First of all, you can see it's all about city growth. We have to grow New York to 80 and into 180 and into 250,000. So that's a lot of city growth for the city of New York. Now, it's the only city that we're required to grow. But we have right here, by 1835, 100 loads of clothing to New York. Now, to get that growth going, to get that clothing done that quickly, in 3 years to get our perfect score. There's 6 years there to do that. We would need to do it in 3 to get a perfect score. And to do that and continue to grow the city and do all the other stuff you have to do and get yourself prepared to buy out a competitor and deploy express trains and all this good stuff. The two toughest ones are clearly, well, the first one is this one, 100 loads of clothing. That one is a challenge. And the second one is 100 loads of alcohol to New York. That one is also could be a challenge, but not too bad. So you have a reasonable amount of time to do these. That's why it's only a medium. But so you look at that and say city growth. So city growth, we're going to haul a lot of freight. Let's get a freight guy like Don Lorenzo, or we need to have clothing industries and alcohol, and control that. So maybe Roger. And I can tell you I've done this with Don Lorenzo and did just fine. I've done it with Roger, did just fine. But I want to show you doing it with the lady where you just nail it. So, okay, so here we go. Let's go in and do Metropolis set in 1830 with the lady. And the other thing I didn't mention in that little intro is that the competitors are very aggressive. They will build right into your territory and, in fact, even go within your footprint. So we want to deal with that also. That's all going to be part of the plan here. So we've got the lady. So what does the lady bring us? The lady brings us tremendous passenger revenue. She gets great passenger revenue. She gets a bonus on any passenger revenue. She gets an additional, even a larger bump on express revenue. So in other words, when we have trains that are given express status, she gets even more revenue. So what we're going to do here, we're going to carefully have ourselves a nice, I consider it a nice design. I'm sure some of you could come up with something much better. But what we're going to do here is have an outer ring of passenger and mail lines only. So we're going to have dedicated trunk lines or dedicated lines that are going to run around the outside of our little world here, and they are going to haul passengers and mail city to city. And that's going to be really the foundation, the economic engine that we base everything else off of. And we're going to use rapid expansion, but with a twist, because we're going to be doing these passenger and mail lines rather than automatic lines. Because we're not here for city growth. We're trying to make money, and with the lady, you make money with passengers. So we're going to run passenger and mail lines, and set them up, running several trains. We're going to run 4 trains here between Albany and New York. We'll run 4 between Albany and Syracuse, on and on. And in longer lines, we'll run 6. And the idea is that we just keep that revenue flowing. Look at all these beautiful passengers loading up for us, and we get mail as well. But those passengers are just ka-ching, ka-ching for the lady. And what we're going to do is turn all the stations out so they open up and expand out away from the center. and we're going to have, like I said, all passenger lines. Now here, I actually I was thinking, okay, well, if it's all passenger, why don't we run a double, run a regular train station here, and have kind of a more traditional plug into it. So that's the way I did this one with Albany. But then I realized, no, I want rapid expansion. I want to block out these stations. I want to make sure that the competitors don't come in. So I'll go back to using the 2 small stations, which is, in my opinion, the proper way to do it, because that way you reserve that city for your own use and block everybody else out. But at any rate, here we'll do a more of a, kind of your standard here, and at the other end I've still got the point-to-point type connection in Syracuse. And then, as I said, I'll punch back in and start doing the quote proper rapid expansion with 2 stations. So we'll set that one up, and I'll stay with this. I am going to fast forward some, but I'm going to fast forward less. I know I just really torn about that. I never know how much to do, because I know there are some of you absolutely despise it. Some of you tolerate it but really don't like it, and some of you I think actually like it because it kind of moves us on. But and of course I'm referring to the fast forward, or as the cool YouTubers say now, time lapsing. That's the way they say it now. We're time lapsing this stuff. Time lapse, yeah. So we're going to go ahead and build our lines here, and as I said, we're going to go back to the more traditional, and I am going to time lapse now, and we're going to go out and get Syracuse to Buffalo, passenger mail only, and we're going to get Buffalo over to Pittsburgh, passenger mail only, and we're going to make sure we block Pittsburgh with a second station so that we don't have our competitors from over here in Toledo coming over here and bother us. So here you can see I'm setting up Buffalo. So let me move ahead a little bit till we get Pittsburgh kind of set up and blocked out. Now, I noticed as I was doing the narration that I actually goofed up one of the lines from Albany to Syracuse. I've got one set on automatic. Early it won't matter because it's a beer-to-beer line, so it'll only be passengers and mail. But as the cities grow, there will be some goods flow between them. But not a big deal, but it definitely was a goof. I meant to be passenger mail only on all the lines. So here we are finishing off that Pittsburgh to Buffalo passenger mail line. And you notice I've already thrown down the second station. As soon as I made the connection, I threw down the second station. I don't want that competitor coming over from Toledo and getting into Pittsburgh. I definitely want to cut them off right there and draw a line and say, that's it. Pittsburgh and everything east of that is mine. And so now we're going to start doing what is the most important thing to try to get a perfect score on this one. Is you would be very tempted to say, well, I've got to get meat and beer into New York, and I've got to get wheat and logs and corn and whatever. But the single thing you really need to get first to get a perfect score on this one, at least the way I play it, is the clothing. So what we're going to do, there's already a tailor in Baltimore. And what we're doing here is setting up a cotton line. We're going to run a line. This is going to be our first freight line. So all those that went around that northern rim are all passenger mail. And in fact, this one right here is a passenger mail as well. We're going to have a passenger mail line that runs into Baltimore. But here's where this one deviates a little bit from what we've been doing, is that this one will actually be on the inside. So we're going to be flipped around a little bit here because just the way it all works out with where that cotton is down there near Pittsburgh. So my plan is to build a weaving industry in Baltimore. There's an open slot there, but if you'll notice, a computer owner has already done that for us, so God bless him. We now have the industry there that we need. Had that not happened, I would have put that industry in, even if I had to buy an industry and tear it down, because the plan here is to have line running from the cotton down here below Pittsburgh all the way up to Baltimore, and then have that Baltimore weaving and tailor in the same place, so that everything that we can keep that tailor busy and producing clothing. And then, of course, eventually we'll need the line that goes over from Baltimore to New York to make the deliveries, so we can deliver the clothing. But you'll notice that's the first thing we're working on is the clothing. So now, right now, we're not quite there yet. Right now, we're setting up a passenger line between Pittsburgh and Baltimore. It's a nice long run. It'll make great money. So we're going to set that up, and it's just March of 1830. We're just in our third month. So we're doing great. And money's starting to flow in already from our passenger and mail lines. And we're just going to do it one more time here with passenger and mail line here. And the other thing is, you'll notice about the way this is designed, as I set the supply towers on all these passenger and mail lines, they're all going to get reused. We're going to save a lot of money when we start setting up our freight lines, because we're going to pass through those supply towers and be able to use them for our freight as well. So we'll have nice little super highways of track 4 wide in a lot of places, but we won't have to build extra sets of supply towers most of the time. And I think, did I goof right there? I cannot believe, oh, yeah, I cannot believe I did that. I didn't bid. That was so dense. If I didn't rectify that. Railroad enthusiast pops up. It gives you more passengers. My word. Is there anything better for the lady than more passengers? No, there isn't. So did I catch it in time? I hope I did. Anyway, we're setting up our passenger line from Pittsburgh to good. I did punch in because you just want to, when you get a chance to bid on these things, they may seem expensive, but you can recoup that money so quickly. I mean, add 8% to all of our passenger revenue, or just by spending what, 40, 50 grand or whatever it was. Oh man, absolutely. You want to bid on those and win those auctions anytime you can. So okay, so here we are. We're setting up our passenger and mail line to Pittsburgh, Baltimore. So let's move ahead just a little bit. Now, you know what? Let's just stay right here. We don't need to go anywhere. Let's stick with this. So again, we're setting up our line and we're going to run 6 trains, passenger mail only, between Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and they should do extremely well for us. Nice long run, and it almost closes the loop. And now we've got a task completed, so we've already got 20 trains going in our little system already. So it's May of 1830. We've completed our third task, and we're starting to have a nice little, as I said, a little economic engine, and that's worth saying. It used to be a principle I used to talk about all the time in my early videos, and I've kind of gotten away from talking about it because I'm just assuming it. But the key to every scenario is to build the economic engine that's going to drive what you do. If you have the strong economic engine, if you have something that's making you money, either some nice city-to-city automatic lines, maybe some freight, maybe pass-through warehouse, whatever it is, but big city growth in a couple of cities, or whatever it is that's driving your economy, strong industries, whatever. But you got to have something. Something's got to be there that is the basis that you work from. And in our case, that's this nice big loop of passenger and mail lines. It's beautiful. That's why the lady is so strong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start. Here's our first freight line. Now this one is an aberration from the overall design, because the idea is I want to have the freight line run on the inside of the passenger lines as we're looking at it. So if you kind of think of it as a big loop around from New York going counterclockwise, or for some of you folks anti-clockwise, all the way around to Baltimore and then back to New York, then we would have freight lines running inside that to allow us to move the freight wherever we need to. But this one, because of the geography and the way the cotton works and what have you, I'm doing it the opposite because I didn't want to cross the lines. So we're going to run cotton into that Baltimore, and we're going to run plenty of trains up there and make sure that we can keep that weaving industry fed and make sure that we can keep producing clothing so that we can start shipping clothing eventually over to New York. So we're going to set up a nice big long freight line here that dumps straight into Baltimore and deliver cotton into that weaving industry. So now we're tackling that hardest task, that clothing, to 100 loads of clothing to New York. So we are doing the one thing you really need to do, which is start that production and delivery as early as you can. Provided you're not doing it in other words, don't just sacrifice your economy. So in other words, if you were to just build the big, long, expensive line from New York to Baltimore, which costs a lot because of the bridges that you have to build to get out of Baltimore, and then build this big, long, expensive line to haul the freight up to Baltimore, then you'd have a line that is profitable but not great running that freight because it's a long haul for the cotton, and you would have your city-to-city line from New York to Baltimore. And that's about all you could afford to do. Plus, if you spent all that money, you might not have a weaving industry there to start with, so you'd have to wait until you found out where a weaving industry went because you wouldn't have any money to put one in where you want it. But by building those passenger and mail lines first, we've got an engine to work with. So, all right, sorry, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I really think the most important thing in all of these scenarios is figure out how you're going to make money and start making a lot of money as fast as you can. I mean, duh. It's a tycoon game. Duh. All right. So now we're going to set up our New York to Baltimore line, and it's going to be an automatic line. So now we are going to deviate from our initial strategy. We're going to set up an automatic line because we want to get that clothing delivery started. And right now you kind of see me hesitate because I'm kind of noodling this over in my mind. Do I really want to have a passenger only line and then a freight only line? And I finally decided, no, I'm just going to run the freight. I'm going to run automatic, so I'll get a little bit of both. So we'll still make good money on the passengers. It just won't be there won't be express and they won't be quite as fast because they're going to be hauling freight. But that's okay. We'll do just great, and they will make great money. And the main thing is they'll deliver clothing to New York. So we set up this line, and let's just move ahead a little bit further. All right, so we're finishing off that New York to Baltimore automatic line. And now we want to start thinking about the items for growing New York. We need meat, we need beer, and we need some raw materials. So what we're going to do first is build out our long freight inner circle, if you will. So what we're going to do is go over and kiss the passenger line, and we're just going to run parallel to it between the cities, and that way we pick up the supply towers. Then we're going to bypass the cities that we're not trying to reach right now. So basically our goal is to go all the way out to Buffalo where there's a meat factory. And so we're going to build an inner ring for freight and have it bypass Albany and Syracuse, and it'll run straight from New York all the way to Buffalo. And again, kissing up against the passenger line so that we can pick up the supply towers as we go along. And that does several things for us. One is, of course, it gives us the range, saves us the supply towers. Not a big deal, but it's a savings. And it gives us the a ring that we can then, anytime we have freight we need to move to all those cities, Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, or New York. In fact, even Baltimore, because it's got that automatic line, which is essentially a freight line. We can just plug into that line and take it wherever we need it to go. And because any of the cities that aren't connected could easily be connected, like Syracuse or Albany can be connected to the freight line. And you'll notice there I did something unusual for me. I left a tunnel because I wanted to keep the elevation. I didn't want a big incline there because I run these little grasshoppers. Well, we'll see what comes of leaving a tunnel in your line later. So now we've got this. We're about to have this big old line that's going to run an automatic line between Buffalo and New York. So it'll haul our meat for us out of Buffalo to New York. That's the main purpose. We'll make good money on passengers and mail that get added into the mix as well. And so once this is all set up, we'll have a really profitable line that's also taking care of our meat deliveries to New York. And I should note, too, that we've already accomplished one of our optional tasks, which is the 5 express lines at one time. And that's really a bigger deal than you might think. With the Lady, of course, it's easy to get them because we're running all these passenger and mail lines. But on the other hand, had we not gotten them right away with these grasshoppers, we could get in this situation where our competitors have out-researched us, or maybe they've researched directly out to the Dunham or Jervis or one of the other faster trains, certainly, or they've gotten the John Bull much faster than we did. And that being said, it would be hard for us to get the express trains. As a matter of fact, when I played through this with other characters and used different tactics where I wasn't getting early express trains, that actually became a difficult task to do, and I had to really work hard to get express lines with Roger or with Don Lorenzo, for example. But that's another reason the Lady's so great is, 5 express lines for her, particularly with that outer ring of passenger mail lines, it was a no-brainer. So here we go. Now we finally got our line set up, go to Buffalo to New York and haul that lovely meat over to New York to feed those hungry people. And so there we go. That's one down. And we want to move ahead down and think about the beer side of the equation. So we've got meat going to New York. What about the beer? And so we're just, of course, closing out bonds, opening bigger ones anytime we can. We'll take great personnel anytime we can get them. But you can see that express line in danger of losing its status. That means that one of our competitors has gone ahead of us. Somebody's got the John Bull. So we know that's coming. So there goes our easy money. But part of this strategy was get express lines very early and make that extra money for a while to help us fuel the early economy, because that's the key, is to get your economy going early. You notice we also got another task complete there. We have, I think it's 25 trains. Yeah, 25 trains, average of 10,000 profit. I'm not sure. Honestly, as others have asked, I'm not sure what that means. One of these days, one of us will have to figure that out. If you know, put it in the comments, please, exactly how that works. I don't mean like kind of how it might work, but if you know exactly how it works, let us know. And here's the one thing I did notice when I did my beer meat line. I forgot to do my signals on the our inner loop here, the freight line. And of course, you have to put up the sets in between each of the supply towers, because the tool only will take that big segment between supply towers, or between a supply tower and a station. It won't do the whole line. Okay, so I'm slowing down here because we've got some interesting stuff. We've got an analyst. So we're going to buy some stock that's going to cost us about 600 grand. Then we're going to go out and hire an analyst. Oh, we lost him. Oh well. I was too slow. I wanted to buy the stock. Well, I wanted to make some money off the analyst, but no matter. Now we own part of Don Lorenzo. Shucks. All right. So we keep on keeping on. And I know that I have to eventually own somebody, so looks like we're going to go after Don Lorenzo because we just bought him. I do want to get that spy, though. If we can at least get the spy and get some goods. And I want that market crier. I want everything. I want the spy first because I don't want the spy to time out on me. And then that market crier, we need about 68 grand to get the market crier. So we'll let it run up to gather enough money to get us the market crier, and then we'll go grab that because, of course, if we can get more passengers, that's just tremendous money for the lady. So we'll emphasize comfort, get more passengers. Beautiful. All right, so we did get our spy, so we should get something out of that. We missed the analyst. I was too slow, probably too slow noticing it. There's a lot going on in this game when you got a lot of things when you're trying to build something and then a lot of stuff going on. But so now we need to think about getting, as I said, we need to be getting our freight line, our automatic line between Albany, which produces beer, and New York, which needs beer. And right here, I'm just finishing off running some more trains on that Buffalo to New York, and I'm kind of starting them out of the Buffalo side because I want to get that meat moving over to New York as quickly as possible. So now I'm going to put in another station. This is going to be to set up our freight line to New York. And what we'd love to do is pick it up. Yeah, and it works, barely. Want to pick it up so we can hook in right before that bridge so we don't have to build another bridge across the way here. And we can use that same bridge we used for our basic freight line. So now with this little hook up here, we can run a line from Albany to New York. And we can set up an automatic line, and that will pick up beer, of course, and take it down to New York and then carry a few passengers and mail as well. And I contemplated making this one freight only, but I decided that it wouldn't, I would rather have the line make some money. It's going to take, it potentially could take, and it will take passengers and mail away from the passenger and mail line, but it worked out just fine. And that would be an interesting, I guess, if you were really into this, interesting study to see how it would have been better to make it freight only, recognizing that it would be doing a lot of some deadheading back from New York, particularly early. And it automatically picks up the freight anyway, first choice. So you're going to haul all your freight with an automatic or a freight line. The question is, do you gain or lose based on the fact that you're stealing passengers and mail from your dedicated passenger mail line? Don't know, and honestly, not sure I'm going to ever figure it out. But maybe one of you guys knows. All right, so here we go. So now we're getting our beer going to New York, obviously. And if you're going to have meat and beer flowing to New York, you need to keep them flowing. So we'll deal with that next. Now we've moved over to Buffalo. We're going to run cattle delivery into Buffalo. And what we're doing here is setting up a little runway, a separate set of track to be able to deliver into the station there in Buffalo on the inside where our freight's supposed to come in. Now, I actually goofed here because I had an incomplete thought. Deliver to platform 3 or 4 over there would be consistent with our freight everywhere else. However, the thing is, there's no freight line existing, so I didn't really need to tie it off to the passenger line. That was kind of silly. That was an incomplete thought. So here's the other one, and I'm kind of rather stubbornly saying I want it to come in on that right-hand side because that's the freight side. You know, if you look at all the way around going over towards Syracuse and Albany, the freight is on the bottom as we're looking at it. And so I wanted to keep this one that way as well. So we're going to go over there and kind of kiss a freight line up like this. And that's when I realized, well, there is no freight line over here. So when I tied off, I was actually tying off an entryway. See this? This is actually tied off to the express line. Don't want it. I don't want that. So we want a direct line. So it's simple to fix. You just delete the two lines you made and the little switch there, the crossover, and run the line directly in. And there's still a little bit of a challenge with this, but so we'll run the line directly in to Buffalo. There we go. And start to double track it, and we go, oops, we don't quite fit. Shucks. So what we're going to do here is basically set it up so that there's just this one little section of track that's single track, and then we'll run it back out double track on the other side. So it's and it's no big deal. I mean, a lot of good players don't even double track like I do anyway. I have to double track. Sorry, I just do. It's almost like a compulsion for me. And it also seems like every time I don't double track something, I come back later and say, man, if that was double tracked, I could link right into it. So I do double track. But here, I don't know what I was doing here. I get the line got really messed up somehow. So, and I think I see. I think it was leftovers from the line that we ran to kind of merge over to that express line, the merger that never should have happened. So here we go. Now we can build a line that's going to run out and kind of be a single line right there in that area right near the logging, and then we can double track it on either side. So anyway, that works out. We run cattle in there. The rest of this is pretty straightforward, so let's move ahead. So now we're moving ahead to where we run wheat into our beer producer in Albany. And this one, it's interesting now in retrospect, the two hardest things probably for me in this whole thing were hooking up cattle into Buffalo and wheat into Albany. As weird as that may be, or may seem. And I could have had such a super simple little solution. I'll think of it later. So if you notice here, remember I mentioned I left a tunnel, which I never do. Well, look what happens. That tunnel is right exactly where you don't want it, right where we don't need it, right in the way where, oh, I might have been able to do that, but right in the way where I can't quite run my line the way I want to get that wheat into Albany. And I look at this and scratch my head and say, you know what, this got to be cleaned up, because it's just not going to work. We're going to have big inclinations. We're going to have a mess here. So what we're going to have to do here is just clean up our mess a little bit. So some of this track in here, that's really our freight line, our main freight line, is going to have to get out of our way, and we're going to have to rethink this and think about how we want to do this to enable us to keep that freight line going with the bypass and also have our line out to the wheat. So I kind of stubbed it out and looked it over and said, okay, now we're going to come down and we could join in and come out the other side, or we could I'm really thinking here, and I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree, so bear with me while I noodle through this. I'm trying to figure out how much of that track did I actually delete, because it seems like it's disappeared on me. And then I realize it's back there to that merger with the Albany station. So see the little cone there? That's where it deleted back to that, because that was a segment of track in the deletion tools mind. So if we run a line like that and cross them, do a flat crossover, that could work. That could give us a reasonable line there. There's not going to be a tremendous amount of traffic through there, at least not yet. So we can run a flat crossing. Then we want to double track it back, which is always, a bit of a challenge because they can't quite do the two side by side. So we're just going to have to figure out, okay, how can we do this so that we don't introduce giant inclinations and bridges and tunnels and stuff we don't want. And if I haven't, I've talked about this in other videos, but see that giant inclination, that's no good. We don't want that. But if we do kiss it over there a little closer, I think we're going to come up with something that might work here. And I finally decided, what really would work is if I run my main line first and make sure it's flat, and then make the wheat pay the price if there's any price to be paid for crossing over. So let's start over. And I guess the moral here, first of all, if you were a better player than me, you would have already had this finished. But if you're not, the lesson is don't be afraid to trash something if it doesn't work out the way you like it, or if it just doesn't, it's just too clumsy or whatever. Trash it and do it again. Because here we can see by having our wheat cross over our main trunk line, we can actually do it reasonably well. We can do it if there's a little inclination there, big deal. Our wheat trains slow down a little bit as they come near the station. No big deal. It's not going to hurt a thing. So so there we go. Now we've got something that for now is actually usable. And the one thing I wanted to do here to make sure is I want to make sure that I've got that enough of the line kissing over there near the station that I can put the cross in there, the switch, so that we can have access, it can go up and back. We need the diamond or the crossing or whatever you want to call it in there if we're going to plug into both terminals. And I was also thinking the other option would have been just to plug into platform 2, but there I left enough room to put the switch, all is well. Now we have our main freight line is operational, and this wheat line is also working. So we can set up the wheat, set up our signals, and start running wheat directly into Albany. And now we can keep a steady flow of beer going to New York. Now we're checking to see if we could afford the John Bull. It's pretty pricey right now, and we do want to get to it as quickly as we can because it will absolutely speed up our economy, because that little grasshopper is it's a pretty puny little machine. But big thing here, get that museum in New York, and notice it's getting 82% demand satisfaction. At this point, all we've run in there are meat, beer, one boxcar of clothing, and probably, I don't know for sure, but probably a little bit of cloth. So in other words, the stuff that's made in Baltimore that can be exported has gone over there. So what we want to do now is speed that up. So we want to own the weaving and weaving and tailor in Baltimore. We'd love to own both of those. And the beauty of the lady with that good economic engine we've got going right now, we have the ability to do this sort of thing. Now, the other thing here, I notice an error. And what has happened here is we've got a train in Albany that wants to go back to the wheat, and we've got a train at the wheat that wants to go to Albany. and that just says, whoops, forgot to put in signals. So when I did all that correction in here and did the deleting the track, rebuilt the wheat line, all that good stuff, I forgot to put signals back in. So didn't hurt the main line because there's not that much running on it right now, frankly, but the main freight line. But it did kill our wheat delivery. So now we got that fixed. We got signals going all as well. Now we notice that an analyst has popped up. And I try to keep an eye on what's popping up there in terms of employees. I'm not perfect at it by any means because there's a lot going on and my little tiny brain can't handle all this. But an analyst you definitely want to watch out for. There's lots of ways we can use them. And we're going to use one little trick here to make some quick capital because, we're still in growth mode. We want money as fast as we can get it. We're going to target Tricia. And we had just closed out a bond because we wanted to open a bigger bond, frankly, because we were going to buy some industry. But what we're going to do instead, since the analyst came along, we're going to buy as much of Tricia as we can. We can get 25% of her for a little over $1 million. So we're going to buy 25% of Tricia. Then we're going to go in and run it forward until we can afford the analyst. So we spent as much as we could on that. Now our economy's strong enough. We knew we could get the analyst quickly. We're going to sick the analyst on Tricia and say increase Tricia's share prices. Then on normal speed, we're going to go right back into Tricia, and we're going to sell all that stock we just bought for $1.489 million. And so in that little 10-second transaction, we made $383,272. Now, bunch of things. Let's just talk about this a bit. I'll just let this run and talk about this analyst for a moment. We could have, by the way, we own a chunk of Don Lorenzo. Remember earlier in the game, an analyst popped up and I was just too slow and I missed the analyst, so I ended up keeping some of Don Lorenzo's stock. And I held it because we do want to own somebody at the end. Now we could have, if we'd wanted to, with this next analyst, we could have bought Don Lorenzo more of his stock rather than Tricia's, use that same trick to sell it all and make even more money by artificially inflating the price. However, I chose to just go with Tricia because Tricia's going to be my make money on stock deals person, and Don Lorenzo will be the one we're targeting to buy. So I didn't want to lose ground in purchasing Don Lorenzo. So but it doesn't matter. I mean, any way you look at it, you can make good money with those little stock plays. So we made good money on Tricia, and we still have our stock in Don Lorenzo. And really, the rest of the game, when analysts pop up, we'll just use them after our economy's even stronger. We'll just keep using the analysts to, if we get the opportunity to drive Don Lorenzo's price down, so we can buy larger and larger chunks of his stock. And while I was talking about stock trading, you notice we bought both the tailor and the weaving industry in Baltimore. And in fact, the money we made on the stock transaction almost paid for one of those two industries. So we bought them, we're upgrading them. Now our cloth production is getting higher, and we can ship more and more cloth to New York so that we can close out that objective more quickly. All right, we have cloth, clothing, meat, and beer going into New York. What we'd like to do now is get some of those raw materials and make sure that we just keep New York growing and growing. So looking for a way to put in a warehouse and automatically pick up those logs so that we can have those logs ready, because there's a wood-based industry in New York, and there's plenty of demand for logs, and we can just ship them right through our warehouse and take credit for them and make sure that supply is constant without having to run another train line. So we're going to run wheat and corn, logs, and milk, because it's nearby, and veggies nearby, and fruit, which is nearby, into a warehouse that is has its catchment area within New York, and it's automatically picking up the logs. So we're already, just by putting it in, we're delivering logs to New York. And we'll go ahead and set up some rural routes into that warehouse to stock it. Now here you see we're buying a sawmill in Albany. A second industry has popped into Albany. Now why in the world would you buy a sawmill in Albany? Well, the answer will be revealed in part 2. So let's wrap up this one right here. And I don't know how I've done it, but I've managed to miss the notification that we passed through 80,000 population in New York. But we did. We have grown New York to 80,000, and we've kept it steady growth. And really, again, we've given it beer, meat, cloth, and clothing right now. And we're just starting to give it setting up that warehouse to give it logs, which it was getting overland, and some other goods that we'll handle in the next session. So I hope there was something useful in this one, and I hope you'll be able to join us for part 2. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.